So my specialty is in problem horse, just because I've spent so much time doing it, and it really just comes down to restarting them and getting really good basics.
Yeah.
It's not anything fancy. I don't have to do anything wild. It's just going through the alphabet and teaching them the numbers, and it usually will fix whatever problem they have.
Yeah, that's what I've come to realize, is actually the basics is not only the most important, but it's kind of almost the easiest and most difficult all at once. And I feel like if you can get that right, then everything else is either almost tricks or gymnastics, you know, like you're just adding on little fancy moves here and there, which sounds very flippant, but I don't mean it like that, you know. But if you get that foundation really strong, everything else is easy.
Yeah. And I when I met Warwick a couple years ago, I had horses that I kind of hit a wall with them as far as like anxiety level. They could do the stuff, but they were still anxious. They were still nervous, and I couldn't get to the next level with them because that was holding me back. And it all came back to the basics. You know, I thought I was good at basics before. I got even better at basics. And then the next year I realized my basics aren't as good as they were. My basics got even better. So it seems like the further I go, the better my basics get.
Yeah.
I always thought, the advanced stuff was going to be harder. And I'm finding now the advanced stuff is easy. The basics are hard.
Yeah. There's a Bruce Lee quote that I love, which is, I'm totally kind of taking it out of context and going to be ruining it in the process, but it's something like, that he doesn't fear the man that's practiced 10,000 different kicks once. He fears the man that's practiced the same kick 10,000 times. And it's that same solidification of basics, getting everything really right at grassroots, that generally it always comes back to, like you say, even if there's a problem at sort of advanced level, it just always comes back to solidifying the foundation. And I think for me, that's the difference that I've noticed between being just a rider and a trainer and a horseman. It's this ability to kind of understand the mental processes as well, to really not separate those two things out into just being able to get the horse to physically perform something. But there's a really big difference between that and getting the horse to actually want to be with you doing that and being really happy and comfortable. And that, for me, if I can achieve that kind of relationship with my horse, even just one horse in my lifetime, I'll consider that to be huge. So the purpose for us today, apart from obviously having the chance to talk with you, which is purely selfish on my part, is to kind of just reiterate about starting points and foundations and perhaps expectation of our horses, because what I see a lot in my work as a coach as well is this again, I'm not wanting to sort of label people or say that they're doing things right or wrong, but this, what's the word for it? Basically like labeling of horses within emotions that we would consider very human, like, oh, he's a, they call them different names, or they see them as naughty, or, these sorts of behaviours which actually are very human thought processes, which I don't feel like we can apply to the horse.
No.
So do you have thoughts on that? I'm really fascinated.
I see it as when people label a horse as something, it usually comes back to the horse either doesn't understand what you want, or they're not comfortable doing the thing that you want.
Yeah.
Because when you have them comfortable and they know, the emotions go away.
Yeah, exactly.
They just do it.
Yeah. And it's actually more of a revelation of our lack of knowledge ending at that point, as to know how to deal with things going forward. And then it becomes very easily to transfer that responsibility onto the horse, rather than say, well, actually, I'm out of skills at this point and I don't quite know how to proceed. And as a result, I'm going to kind of let my emotions overwhelm me and I'm going to say it's your problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So this past week, I've just brought Dee into work. And the very beginning point that I'm starting from has been very much informed by your work and Warwick Schiller's work, in terms of understanding where their thoughts are in the first instance, really getting the horse to be with you on an energetic and emotional and focused level, so that then you're dancing that very beautiful space between having them overwhelmed perhaps by what you're asking and kind of shutting down, and the other end of the spectrum, which is just like flying like a kite over here. So this is something that I'm really experimenting with at the moment, that I'm in the process of learning about. And so for me, that's been just fascinating, like understanding how horses demonstrate to us when they're uncomfortable, or perhaps there's too much tension or too much pressure being put on them in these incredibly subtle ways. And I've realized that I've perhaps been asking a lot but not listening so much. So it hasn't so much been a partnership, it's been more of a dictatorship, and not willingly, but just
intentionally.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on start points and foundations? I know these are really broad topics, but just to kind of have a natter about it.
Well, I have one of my good horses. His name is Super Horse. He's a 10-year-old quarter horse gelding, and I came to a point with him a couple years ago where he could do a lot of really cool stuff, and I hit a wall. And I couldn't go on any further because he was the one that was getting anxious and spooky and stiff, and he'd go around with the shape that you wanted, but his mouth would be wide open. Like just, and he'd spook at everything every day in the same arena. And people would tell me, well, it's his breeding, that particular bloodline, they're very cowy, they're known to be very reactive and sensitive, whatever. And I had other people say, well, you just need to put a noseband on him, you just need to do this or that or whatever. And, work started helping me with him, and he didn't say, this is your problem, he didn't say anxiety is the problem. He has a way of like pointing me in a different direction. Like he just has a way of I figure it out.
Yeah, it's a sign of a good teacher, I think, when you can illuminate, you can lead the student to the answer, but not give them the answer.
Yeah, and what hit me, the light bulb that came on, was he didn't actually know what he was supposed to do. He didn't actually know his job.
Yeah.
And in the process of not knowing his job, I was having to do a lot of extra stuff to get him to do his job.
Yeah.
And he mentally would just check out, and not check out like shut down. He would be the distracted, every day was like this. And if I forced him here, his mouth would be open, just evading what we were doing. So the last 2 years have been, I went back to the groundwork, and found, and like the groundwork wasn't bad, but it was going back to the beginning of the ridden stuff, especially Warwick's first chunk of, the exercises that he does. He got explosive the very first couple exercises, being able to stand there and just bend his head to one side. He'd sit there and just gnaw and open his mouth, and it was an eye-opener of how bad he really was, even though he had been so good, good for a long time. And now we're up to the point where like he doesn't open his mouth anymore. And we're working, I had a lesson with a dressage trainer about 6 months ago. She was an Olympic bronze medalist in 92, I think.
Wow.
And we were working on third level stuff. And she's like, who trained your horse? And that to me was like, okay, I'm on the right track. We show up in our Western saddle and our hackamore, and we're doing third level stuff. And, I didn't come home and continue practicing what she had me do. I came home and kept doing the stuff that I had been doing, because to me it was working. But it came down to just teaching him each thing step by step, making sure he knew it, making sure he was comfortable with it. And so that taught me a lot. And